Okay, great. I got this great question about how long it takes to come out of the ego from someone. Okay. I got this great question from someone about how long it takes to come out of the ego. And so I thought I'd share with you my perspective. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I broke free from the ego and how long it took. And in the video following this, I'll talk about dealing with the ego and the different aspects of it. So if you like talks like these, please subscribe. Not to disappoint anyone, but even after going through various stages of spiritual awakening, I still have an ego and all the emotions that come with it. I'm not necessarily trying to achieve transcendence or not achieve it either, because to be honest, achieving a certain spiritual state doesn't really mean much to me. At the end of the day, I just want to be happy and in peace. But something that did happen through the various stages of spiritual awakening is that there is now more space between the ego and me. Meaning, I'm not as attached to the ego, and a lot of times I'm observing rather than being intertwined with the drama of it. And I can go into that observer space much more easily. For me, it all started with an ego death that took around 10 years. The first 5 years, I was in the thick of it, and I lived pretty much without an identity. That is, I couldn't identify myself as a certain gender, age, personality, or anything because none of those things felt real to me. It felt like everyone was pretending to be these things. You can check out my video on my experience going through an ego death if you'd like to know more in detail. Through this process, a separation between the ego and the observer self happened. I still feel all the emotions like feeling hurt, upset, angry, sad, depressed, and all that, but the difference is I don't take it seriously, at least not as seriously as I did before. For example, if I'm in an argument with, let's say, my husband, Jay, I still feel all the negative emotions. My cheeks become heated, my voice gets louder, and I start to talk fast. But as the argument is happening, I'm also aware that my ego is feeling upset and hurt, and that there's pent-up energy happening within that needs to be released. And my thoughts are exaggerated at the moment because some fear has been activated, so it's untrustable. And I'm also aware when I start to go into an unconscious territory, where now the argument is no longer productive or healthy. Because I'm aware, I can always step in or pull back from the argument and choose to do the compassionate thing for me and Jay. Anyway, going back to my story, after an ego death, I started to rebuild back my identity. I know some people say, why would you do that? I mean, isn't it freeing to live without an identity? And, for me, that wasn't the case. I know some people feel a spiritual bliss when their ego death happens, but for me, ego death and spiritual bliss didn't come together or even close to each other. The ego death I went through wasn't pleasant at all. So I was fully motivated to rebuild back my identity. I remember looking at people completely fascinated how they can be so invested in things like their studies, their future, their career. I mean, how are they believing that any of those things were real? I was fascinated and even envious that they could care so much. Anyway, so I started to try to rebuild my identity back by trying different things. I wanted to see what I would like. I tried different careers, tried different things that people said was fun, and etc. And very slowly over the years, I started to recognize and feel my authentic self emerge. And I would say that my identity is now part of my authentic self. Now, there was something that surprised me about the ego. I discovered that my ego had its own quote-unquote personality that was hardwired into it. Okay, let me explain. Before, I mistakenly thought that it was just all made up and we were all pretending to be a certain way. So if we didn't like being that way, I thought we can just start pretending to be something else because none of it was real anyway. But then I discovered that that's actually not true. It's not all just a figment of the imagination. There's real substance to the ego too. My genetic disposition, the memories I have, the experiences I go through, cultural influences, and even past lives and ancestral history, all these factors and much more make up a certain personality and psyche within the ego. I mean, isn't that fascinating? I mean, isn't that, I don't know. I think it's so beautiful and it's so intricately and delicately put together. I love it. I love it. Anyway, going back to my story, even after building up an identity, I never became fully attached to it. I still feel somewhat detached from a lot of things that I would say most people care about. I'm still fascinated by how much people could care about how things should be done. And I love that there are people like that so the world can go around. I mean, if you left it up to me, I just couldn't care enough. Most times though, I feel removed and at peace, or like this sense of contentment, since I feel the observer, the consciousness in the background somewhat consistently. In conclusion, if I were to offer up to you my perspective, I don't think the ego is something to be broken free from, not ultimately anyways. Going through experiences like ego death, meditation, and such could temporarily create a separation between different parts of us. But ultimately, the point of spiritual expansion isn't exclusion of any aspect of us. I believe with spiritual maturity, we get to see and experience for ourselves how unified everything is, how everything is interrelated, and how everything, all aspects of us, even our egos, are all expressions of God itself and therefore sacred and holy. And so to condemn anything is to condemn an aspect of God and ultimately condemn us. Anyway, this is the end of this video, but in the next video, I'll talk about how to deal with the ego and different aspects of it. Tell me in the comment section below when you felt a separation from your ego happen. I'm told a lot of people achieve it during meditation or prayer. As always, thank you for being here with me, talking about esoteric things like this. It's really nice to be able to connect with you and hear your perspective. Until next time, regards, Ray.
Oh no.